evening, folks. Thanks so much for joining. Or if you're going to join, we're going to just sit here for a little bit and wait for Hattie to pop on as well for our little Biblio talk this evening. Hopefully you all have been having a nice Sunday. All right. No, that's not the one I wanted. This is the one I want. Oops. Sending you that invite, sis. Invite. Oh, that was quick.
Yeah, that actually, we'll see if it actually holds up this time.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. How are you, sis?
I am good. How are you?
Good. It has been a good, very full weekend. We did a quick pop out to Waconia this afternoon too to see Jesse and the Art Wander, because we didn't get to go last year either. So, but it was a nice, quick little visit. But it was really nice to see. And
Good.
I mean, his studio when it's like clean, and
Nice.
the boys got to do a print. So Jesse let them do a print. So yeah, it was kind of fun. It was nice.
Mom and Dad there? Were Mom and Dad still
Not yet. Jamie said they left about noon. We didn't get out there till about 3, and the whole thing was over at 4. So, but yeah, so our brother, one of our brothers, we have 3 of them, but one of our brothers, his name's Jesse. He is it Prairie Fox Designs? Is that his Instagram handle?
It's Prairie Fox something. I don't know if there's anything after it. May just be Prairie Fox.
It might be Prairie Fox.
Maybe. Mm-hmm.
But he is an artist, and he has been taking that very, very seriously, and he does a lot of print art and book. He's working on some children's books right now too. So if you get a second, go check him out on. Yeah, I think it's.
I think it's Prairie Fox. I think it's at Prairie Fox. I'm not 100% sure on that.
And I think if you put in at Prairie Fox, you would for sure find it. And it's a little fox. You can't miss it.
Yeah, and it's Jesse Bergstrom, so it's not too hard,
So, okay. Should we?
Yeah, we're at the
time. Okay. So welcome everyone. Anyone who might be listening to this now or later.
Yeah.
Tonight we are doing just a quick video talk actually on one of the books that we're reading for our book club called Book Club and Cocktails. We're very creative with our names. Very creative. But we actually realized last month that we haven't ever done that.
Yeah.
And so we both read the book a little bit early because we usually just read it the week of our book club. Oh,
that was my camera.
There goes Patty.
Sorry. No problem.
Okay. And now it's going to be slow.
I'm back.
Oh, okay. I think you're back. Good.
Okay.
And this also ties in really beautifully with Hattie's atmospheric reading that she likes to start in mid-September and take through December, to be perfectly honest. The atmosphere changes slightly, but she goes deep. So our book this month, Hattie, do you want to introduce our book?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book we chose for our book club and cocktails is called Things in Jars by Jess Kidd.
Mm-hmm.
And basically I of course wanted to read this book. This is 100% in my September, October reading genre. It's 100% in my love of detective, Victorian era literature. Oh my gosh. It was everything that I gravitate towards.
Mm-hmm.
This book pretty much was offering it. And the protagonist is a woman, right? So this woman so literally everything in the description of this book was everything that I would have been wanting to look for in an atmospheric read for September. And I will say, I'm not going to give anything away or anything. I will say, and Hannah will totally agree with this, I have a really bad tendency to set my expectations way high.
Yeah.
So I will say,
yeah,
my expectations were not met in terms of greatness of this book. Right. That being said, I do think I need to make it really clear to everyone that my expectations were probably not attainable at all.
I mean, when Hattie gets her expectations going, it's real tough to meet them. I'm just, as her little sister, I'm just going to be real honest about that. And when it comes to reading, it's even harder. Um, so yeah. So do you want to go first a little bit about like what you thought and your?
I do want to know
your
what your
genre?
expectations met. I do want to, like, before we even like kind of delve in, like,
Mm-hmm.
what your expectations for this book met or exceeded, or
that's a good question. I didn't have any expectations for the book. It's not in my genre. It's not in my wheelhouse of reading.
Yeah.
I did realize when I was reading this one that I love detective stories, but I like them in video form. I love detective shows. I love detective movies until they get too gross, and then I don't care for them anymore. But I realized, I mean, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't.
Yeah,
it was fine. It was a good book. I enjoyed it.
I just wanted to know, like, expectation wise, like where it landed.
I didn't really have I did not have great expectations.
Which is true. Well, Charles Dickens there. I like it. Well, Victorian England. Okay, this is what I'm going to start with the things that I loved about it.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you can tell the things that you loved about it, and then we can go into stuff that maybe we didn't love.
Okay. Perfect.
I think the thing that I loved the most was the quirkiness. It was so quirky.
Yeah.
You do not always get that. I've read a lot of
Victorian mystery.
18th, 19th, 20th century sort of detective stuff. And it can be very sort of staid, and like everything is just sort of like it kind of is this pattern of things, and everything's I don't want to say boring, because I don't find it boring, but it can be a little bit repetitive in some ways. That you kind of get the same tropes and the same kind of ideas in each, and the same kind of characters, right? This book, I found it very quirky for a number of reasons. And at first, I was not sure about that. Just because I wasn't expecting it,
Sure.
But like, honestly, probably like less than 100 pages in, I'm like, okay, I kind of love like the weird things. Like, there's this I don't think I'm giving anything away. There's this ghost who's like a character in the book.
I mean, you read the first page and the ghost is on the
and the ghost is there. Exactly.
So you're not giving anything away.
And the other thing that I thought was really interesting that you don't usually, that in the stuff that I've read anyway in this genre, is like you actually know pretty early on in this book, like, who done it.
Right. Yeah. Right? I mean,
So it's not really a book about figuring out who done it,
right?
But it's the story that surrounds the thing that has happened.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And there are some, like, I mean, Hattie reads a lot more detective stuff than I do, so I don't know. I thought there were some interesting, I'm going to say twists. That's not quite the right word. Reveals. There were some reveals that I was not like there with it until I was like, oh. Yeah. So I mean, depending on your reading level of mysteries, probably much more likely than anything. But even though you do know who done it, there was still that, like, how does this fit together? Like, how does this puzzle work? And there were still some pieces that were like, okay. That's where we're going with that. Which, I mean, I think a good mystery does that, right? Like, that's the whole point.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think she did a good job of that, of making it a mystery novel that's not actually about, like, solving the case, right?
Yeah, that's a really good way of saying it. And it really is, if you think about it that way, it's a character-driven novel, which is why it's quirky. Right, because the quirkiness isn't just the main character. Which I know her name is Bridget, and I know in my head I call her Birdie the entire time.
Yep.
But that is not how you say her name, because it is not spelled like
It's pretty because it's Bridget, so it's obviously Bridie. But I can tell you, it took me at least half of the novel before I
just gave up.
Yeah. And, like, who cares? It doesn't matter.
Right, it doesn't matter.
But as soon as someone says her name is Bridget, you realize, like, oh, this isn't Birdie. It's not even spelled Birdie.
Right. The R is before the I.
Yeah.
But but yeah, like, she's interesting, but also so it is really so character driven in much more so than I think maybe a lot of detectives novels are. It's usually like the good guy, couple of sidekicks, and the bad guy, and like that's it. But this is a nice web of characters and life story.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, I totally agree. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that made it a little quirky for me, just because I think most of the sort of like, you know, Victorian mystery detective novels and stuff that I've read, while like, yes, you know, you get a little bit of, you get some story with like Sherlock Holmes and Watson, right? And like their relationship and so on and so forth. And that's a quirky relationship and he's a quirky character. But I think the quirkiness in this book, it's more, it's spread out more, first off, right? Because there's more characters, you know, that you're interacting with. And then I just sort of like loved this idea of that this wasn't about like solving the case, because you know what's happened within like 50 pages or so, and then it really is just untangling, right? It's just like pulling at these threads and seeing where they lead. And I honestly like loved, especially because I'm in this like you know, sort of gothic atmospheric reads kind of mode that I'm in right now. I love that like one of the main characters is a ghost who like interact, and the thing that I thought was so funny, and maybe I was reading it wrong, and maybe you noticed this, maybe you didn't, but like she would talk to the ghost in front of other people. And like
people
no one commented on it ever.
No one really, like, she must be a quirky human being to begin with. Like, she must have been like an eccentric, that, because like, that was hilarious to me. And every once in a while, somebody, even though she's talking to the ghost that nobody else sees, and they're having a conversation, the other person will speak. And it's like, it's really quite, it's well done, and it is really funny.
And there are some really funny moments in this book. Like there were moments where I literally was like giggling out loud. I mentioned Markham because I wanted to remember them, and of course I can't remember them now. But I remember like sitting there reading. It's not like a funny story, right? But like her descriptions of things and her descriptions of the interactions between the characters.
People
oh man, some of them were really funny, and I did find myself like giggling out loud on a number of occasions.
There's some definite giggling in the midst of it. The I don't know if this is giving anything, but the family that takes in the orphan, like that whole section, I'm just like, and like you can just see it, and like the crows, and like it's just beautiful. I don't know if they were crows now that they said that. Ravens. That's like, I don't think they're the crows. I think they're the other blackbird. But yeah, like that whole, and then the mother with the baby on her hip, and like that was really priceless. Like some of those side characters. Also, I loved the circus guy with his tent. Like he's trying to be Henry VIII.
I know. Like, so hilarious. And then the fact that he was like in love with Brittany was hilarious, right? Because she hated him. She hated him. She's like, you're the worst of the worst. He was like just completely enthralled by her because she hated him. Like that was like why, you know? So these relationships are also quirky, right? It's like the people are super quirky and weird. And how much did you love the 7-foot-tall maid?
Cora. I actually have to tell you, my two favorite characters. I really did like Bridgie. I really liked her as the main character. She was great. She was fantastic. Super
quirky and weird, super fun.
Quirky and weird. Like you're rooting for her the whole time. Like she's figuring it out. Like she's great. I love her. But Cora, her maid, and actually, is it Mrs. Biddy? Mean Della? No, Mean.
No, I know who you're talking about. I was trying to think if it was Biddy or if it that doesn't sound right, but maybe it is right. Like, is it B's or is it D's? Now I'm not sure.
I thought it was like Biddy, but
it's either Biddy or Briddy. We're terrible.
Gosh, we are terrible. We're terrible with names. That is, I don't know. Is there like a character thing? I'm sure there's not a character thing in this.
No, I don't remember there being a character list in this one, which is unfortunate. But there might.
Those two were
Bibby. It's Bibby.
Oh, Bibby. Miss Bibby.
Yep.
I adored what just kid did with Miss Bibby. Like the whole way through, and like that whole story arc, that untangling.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's her telling the story, right? She's telling the story. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I would say one of the things that Jess Kidd did so amazingly in this is that weaving. We talked about this with the Neville Shute book too, but that weaving together of timelines in a way that and perspectives in a way that doesn't have to be this perspective, like this person and then this person chapter and then this person chapter, like, you know, like R.R. Martin does in like all of those books. Like I can't stand, like it just starts to make me nuts. Like the interweaving, like it is beautifully done. And Bibby's story is a beautiful.
It's a horrible story, right? But she's
horrible.
It in this really beautiful, in this beautiful way that it's intertwined into the other narratives that you're reading as well, whether you realize it or not as you're going.
Right. So yeah, I mean, there are so many things about this that I mean, and she does change like perspectives. I did notice that every once in a while where it would be like a third person perspective, but then it would be like flip kind of like for a real quick chapter into a first person or, and so that was kind of interesting and fun. I actually kind of liked that.
I felt like that was part of the quirkiness. I think that's the thing that, like, for me, it felt like that was quirky, that she was sort of like, at one moment, you know, Britty's telling this story, and then all of a sudden she's talking about Britty as like, oh, and then she went and did this. And it's like, but no, Britty was just telling the story 5 seconds ago, you know, in her own way. Yeah, so that flip of perspective, she does that throughout the book. And I think for me, that just added to that feeling of like quirky narrative, you know?
I think that, and also a narrative in a way that's very, organic instead of like the way that we talk and the way, you know what I mean? Like how we really tell big epic story. We do flip it, right? Even if we tell a story about this morning, it starts in like first person and then flips to third person and goes back from like different perspectives. So there was something really refreshing about that. Reading and then like just being like jarred by it for a minute and then like, oh, all right, that's fine.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it's not ever. I never felt like I read it and then had to go back and reread or something because it was like confusing in that way. It was just sort of like a thing that you took note of, but it was very sort of organic, right? Like it worked. I didn't feel like it was like that jarring or like, oh, did I miss something? I got to go back and like read again. I never had that feeling. No,
me neither. Yeah. So I think we talked about all the things that we loved.
Yes, we did.
And I'm going to just say there's nothing that I didn't like. Like the things that make this book, and I think that people would love about this book, are things that don't interest me on like a heart level, like Victorian England.
Yeah, you just don't care. It's not your thing.
I just don't care. Like and there is a lot of description and there is a lot of like thinking about London at that time and what things are happening, and I think and that's really wonderful and it's heartwarming for people who care,
who love that.
I don't care, like it's fine, it's a perfectly good setting for a story to be told. I have no problem with it. The mystical part also is just not really a thing that like super intrigues me. I don't know, is mystical the right word? Is that the word I want?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is what you're talking
about. Supernatural.
Yeah, I was gonna say the supernatural, like the fact that, you know, the person, the missing girl is sort of, there's mystery. I don't want to give it away.
Right,
but
exactly.
It has some mysterious sort of mystical qualities. And then she sort of like seems to be causing some things to happen in the real world just by being there, right? Her presence and so on and so forth. And then the whole fact that there's this ghost that like literally is the character and Britty is talking to throughout
the entire book,
the whole book. And it's just sort of like normal because nobody seems really commenting on it. So I think that's like what you're talking about. So I think it's sort of like spiritual or sort of that mystical feeling.
Yeah, and like it's fine. Again, and I don't dislike it. It just, I think for people who enjoy that, like even like the little bit of vampire or, you know, just that little bit of that dark piece there, like this fits and gives you that like that stuff, and I'm like, that's great, but it's not my thing.
I guess
like,
it's not your thing. Yeah,
absolutely. It does not do anything to make me love the book more because I don't care. Give me a wizard and we might have a different conversation, but There's no wizards in this book.
There are
But
no
and I
wizards.
think,
Spoiler alert, no wizards.
spoiler alert, no wizards. And I think that that's like the beautiful thing, though. And one of the reasons why I like what we do is because we do read books outside of our. So like for me, this is like a 3-book. It's totally fine. It's good. It's okay.
Yeah.
And if those things appeal to you, then I think you'll really like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If those things don't appeal to you, you'll enjoy it, and it's a perfectly
like good read.
Good read, totally worth your time. It's not you're not gonna be done with like, why did I do that? It has great characters and all that, but yeah, it just isn't one that's like that warms my heart. That's not quite the right word I want, like, because a lot of books I love don't really warm my heart. It doesn't like connect to my soul.
Well, I just think it's just not your genre. Like if this story had taken place in like a young adult fantasy world,
right?
Hannah would be like gushing over it, right? And I'd be like, well, it was fine. It was an okay book. I'll give it. I'm just saying. I just think that's probably what's going on here because
and I
a 4, because I loved all that stuff about it.
Yes, exactly. And I think that is what genre is. Like that, I'm trying to find a different way to talk about it than just genre, because I think the reason we are attracted to certain genres is because it does touch something. It connects in a different way, and it is a lot less form and much more like what's the chord that it's going to pull on you to resonate, to make you like want to like fall in love, right? It's almost more that, which is the genre, which is why we read specific genres, right? Because certain genres have the thing that pulls on the chord that makes you fall in love, right? So that was what I was just trying to like come up with it to like flesh that out a little bit about what that is. But it's well written, great characters. I would recommend it in a heartbeat, particularly if, as a mystery or a Victorian, or as a, like, you want something just really funny, but like also like real and kind of like deals with some real stuff
in there. Definitely. Yeah.
Then it's and I will say, there's a bit of a content warning on this book. There is some, violence against the female, gender-based violence is the word I would be looking for.
Yeah, definitely.
But I will also say in regards that I thought Jess Kidd, the author, did a really nice job being honest about that, but also not dwelling in the details of it in a way that could be really
super triggering,
very triggering for folks. So who maybe have had that experience. So I thought that if you're going to go there well. And I thought she did.
And she did. She really did. I agree.
And she wouldn't have had to. She wouldn't have had to, but she
have to.
And
it felt authentic though.
It was authentic, I think, to the characters and who she was building in this world that she built up, these relationships she built up. So
I totally agree.
Totally
agree. And like I just want to say, like, for me this really was like a solid 4. And this is one of those I do think this may stay on my shelf because this may become like a read in the fall. I think the quirkiness that I also really liked is like none of the characters were sort of just like your normal everyday kind of staid normal people. They were all weird. Like they were all weird.
Very weird.
And I loved that. I mean, the maid is totally weird, but great. She, Brittany is totally weird, but great. The person, the child that they're looking for,
Christiana, I think is
Christabel.
Christabel.
Okay. Christabel is sort of described as sort of this mythical creature, and she has these sort of like mythical qualities. And I think for me, that's something I love. I think the thing that I love the most about sort of this atmospheric kind of Gothic literature, for whatever reason, I love the conversation and the idea that there's stuff out there that we really don't understand, right? That there's like, I'm so like not like a spiritual person like at all, but I love the idea that there are things that we legit don't understand. And that's the thing that draws me in, right? The fact that she's like talking to this ghost is so quirky and weird. And like, do I believe in ghosts? Like maybe I think ghosts do exist. Maybe they do. I don't know. But I love sort of like having that sort of just like in my face, in the sense that like, well, maybe a ghost does exist and like can walk around and talk to you and nobody else sees it. Like that could, you know, maybe that's the thing. Maybe these mystical creatures do exist in some way, right? Whatever that may be.
Right.
And I love that conversation, which is I think I like a lot of this like Gothic lit, because it really it conjures those sort of that feeling of mystery up, whether it's like a haunted house that has like its own characteristics and its own sort of personality and its own will, or, you know, vampires, right? Like, do they exist? Do they not exist? Like, what is this? This is so weird, but like, you know, just like that kind of conversation, for whatever reason, just like super appeals to me. And I think that is what a lot of this like Gothic lit kind of delves into, in a very particular way, like, you know, but I like that. Like, I like that feeling of sort of like the mystery of it. That is appealing to me.
And I will say, for Gothic lit, this isn't the darkest book you've ever read either, right? Like, so if you're like, oh, it's like super, it's not super dark. Like, it's not
light for Gothic lit. This is
very light for Gothic lit. And I just wanted to make that clear, because Hattie has offered up some much darker ones. So if you want to like step your toe into that and haven't ever read Gothic lit before, this is a great place to start.
Absolutely.
Because and it dips your toe into it, but there's still some like other stuff that's happening that isn't, because I think like that suspension of reality, right? Like that's what this Gothic does, that in that kind of darkened place of that suspension, makes a thin place between what is perceived and what is happening, and like all of that stuff just becomes really complicated and foggy. And I think it's hilarious that you love that in your reading. And she hates it everywhere else.
I do. I hate it, but this is what I think. I think this is probably what spurred it on for me more than anything, was actually studying theology, because I think in the end, that's exactly what it is trying to understand the mystery, right? And so to understand it, you have to encounter it, right? You have to actually like enter in to the conversation, whatever that looks like, right? So in theology, that looks totally different, but you have to be willing to enter into it and then acknowledge that you don't know.
Like that there are these places and there are these things that are less tenable than we would like to imagine sometimes.
Not so concrete. And that doesn't make it not real. And like, I think that's the thing that appeals to me. Like, I don't live my life like that, right? But like my intellectual life, like that's where it's always at. It's like, what do I think is not real that maybe could be real? Like, what is that mystery that is still out there that I can learn more about? So.
I mean, and I think that that's what's beautiful about this is like, and it's a mystery, but it's and I think that's what's true about Gothic lit too, right? It's like a mystery inside a mysterious and mystical world, right? It takes both of those things and puts them together in a really beautiful way for people who want to like dwell there and like, you know, get all
sort of like creeped out. And, I don't know, just like start doing like weird stuff. It's like, you know, I don't know, like, it's totally weird. And for whatever reason, like the weirdness of it, like appeals to me, which isn't really like true across the board. Like not all weirdness appeals to me. But for whatever reason,
does.
This definitely does. So.
Well, it is almost 7:30. So 2 things. Hattie, what are you reading now? You finished Things in Jars. So what did you pick up?
So I think I finished Things in Jars like on Friday. And then I picked up this little skinny thing. So I finished it already. It's called The Madman's Ball.
Was it amazing?
It was very well done. Very well done. This is
I need to get that one.
Yeah, historical fiction about women's asylum in Paris, late 1800s.
I'm going to get that from the library because it sounds fascinating.
The Women's Ball by Victoria Mass, M-A-S. She did a great job. And it's a real skinny little thing. It literally, I think it's like 200 pages. It's just over 200 pages. And I finished it last night. So it was very, very good. And it has a little bit of that mystery, of that Gothic feeling of otherworldliness, like that element is in it. So And then this is the one, I haven't started it yet, but I picked this one up, and this is going to be my next one, The Hacienda, which I'm super excited. This one is Gothic house is like kind of the setting. So this is going to be in that sort of genre where we have a haunted house that has a personality and is creeping everybody out.
You love a good house character.
Yeah. It's been compared to Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. It's kind of in that same vein. So that was
and it's written by the same person who wrote Mexican Gothic, right?
No, this one is not. This one is Isabel Cañas.
Oh, my mistake. Okay, sorry.
No, that's
good. But it's in that, that.
But it's in that same genre for sure.
Genre. Yeah. So I finished Things in Jars last night, and I just picked up Louise Erdrich, The Scented. So Louise Erdrich is an author. She's got quite a few books, and she's award winning. And this book, though, I just saw another author on Instagram. I just picked it up over at Half Price Books a couple weeks ago. And she owns a bookstore called Birch Books, I think, Birchwood Books, something like that, up in St. Paul. Oh, Louise Erdrich as well does. And I saw an Instagram post about this book, and it's a ghost story. It's about the haunting of that bookstore. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take my sister's advice, and I'm going to I just picked that book up. I just picked it up. I'm like, I'm going to and I actually picked up 2 of her books because she's been recommended to me many, many times. I've just never read it. So I picked up this one, and then I also picked up the one that she won a bunch of awards for, which I can't think of the name of at the moment. But so I'm not very far into it. I'm only
just started. Yeah,
like 60 pages-ish, 75. But I'm really kind of liking it. When I posted on our social media, some people were like, "Oh no, I really liked her stuff. That's great." And then I actually had a couple of people who were like, "Yeah, I kept trying it. I just do not get it. Like, I don't get it." So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna read that because now I'm intrigued, right? Like, I wonder how that's gonna go. So on page 75, I'm still really enjoying it, and it's quirky, weird, darkish characters, and we have a little ghost thing going on, and it's in a bookshop. And honestly, here's my other problem with this though, is like, of course she talks about books all the time. So now I just need to read all the books.
You're jotting notes to make sure that you can go back and find the books that she's like, you gotta read this. I love it, Hannah.
But she did just talk about Rebecca, and it was another one too. I can't remember. And I was like, oh, Hattie would be so proud. We picked good books. There was another one that we also were reading for the one of our book club days. And I was like, oh, one, I was like, Hattie would be so proud. So, but if I like it, I will keep this for you for Christmas too. And then I am going to get to Babel so that I can get that done, so you can have that for Christmas too.
Yes, that was literally on my list, and I almost went out and bought it. So then when I saw that you bought it, I'm like, okay, now I don't have to buy it because I'll borrow it.
I don't have to buy it, but it has the dust jacket has quotes from Rebecca Rowanhorse. And I can't remember who the other author was, but it's somebody else who I've read. And I was like, oh,
I'm gonna go ahead and get that. Yeah, I think I saw it in one of the flyers. Just one of the promo flyers that I got from my local bookshop. Last time I was there, I think that one was in there, and I just read a little snippet about it. I'm like, yes, please, and I just immediately put it on my to be read list. But I haven't picked it up yet, so I'm glad you got it.
Should be fun. Yeah, so I'm gonna try and get that one done too, and then. Yeah, I do have some other ghosty or dark stuff that I think I'm going to try and just read through October, and we'll see what happens. But but cool. All right.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah. Thanks. Good chat. We'll talk more about Things in Jars.
We didn't talk about this book at all before tonight. That was the first that we've ever even talked about this book. So
yeah, that is true. So
that went well.
Good. And you have you do have the edition that has the book club stuff in the back, right? Just checking.
I know. I was so happy when I saw that. I'm like, oh, thank God. Now I don't have to prep for book club.
Yeah, it is. I think it's going to be a great book club.
I think it's going to be a fun book club. I do think so too. Yeah.
So, anywho. Okay, well, we'll stop because we could go on forever.
We sure can.
But hope everyone continues to read, enjoy. Let us know what you're reading. We always are interested in recommendations. Absolutely. And if you tell us you hated a book that we liked, that's cool too. Or if you liked a book that we didn't like, That's cool. We've been having some of that.
We've heard that a couple times lately. I will say that. We've heard that a couple times.
Sorry about that, folks. But you don't love everything, and that's the beauty of
that's why there's like so many different kinds of books out there. Yeah.
Enjoy the diversity of it.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks, I think.
Yes, I think 2 weeks. Yep.
And I have no idea what we're talking about, so we'll find out in 2 weeks.
It was whatever we were talking about the other day on our chat. Why we read what we read, something like
that. Oh,
yeah.
We were going to kind of talk about our reading journeys, like how we've gotten to where we're at now. That's right. Okay. Yeah. So we're going to talk about that. Join us for that. Unless we change our minds, and then we'll talk about something else.
And then we'll talk about something else. Who knows? But
anywho, so thank you, everyone. Again, remember to like and subscribe. If you'd like to join our newsletter, go to www.bookwar.com, and you can subscribe right there to our newsletter. Find us on Instagram and Facebook, and we are on YouTube as well. So thank you so much, and everyone have a really wonderful Sunday evening.
Bye. Bye, everybody.